What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I want to talk about Carl Bobo Olson. He was a middleweight champion who would defeat Randy Turpin in an elimination match in 1953. Ray Robinson had retired in 1952 after his defeat of Joey Maxim in Yankee Stadium. Carl Bobo Olson would get an opportunity, and he would make the best of that evening. And he would become a middleweight champion of the world. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, and I want to talk about Carl Bobo Olson, phenomenal fighter he was, right here on the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Let's take a look at the career of Carl Bobo Olson. Now, Carl Bobo Olson was born July 11th, 1928. Honolulu, Hawaii. He died January 16, 2002. He was 73 years of age at the time of his death. I had the pleasure of meeting Carl Bobo Olson. He was a stand-up individual. Told me about his personal life before and after boxing. He had quite a career. Was in there with some of the greatest fighters during his era. Stood 5'10.5" He was a middleweight with a 70-inch reach. Had total bouts 115 fights, 97 wins, 46 knockouts, 16 losses, and he was stopped 7 times. He had 2 draws and began boxing October 7th, 1944. He would end his career November 28th, 1966. And what was interesting about Carl Bobo Olson, his mom was from Portuguese and his dad was from Sweden. And he would wind up in Hawaii during World War II. And he was in there, I'll tell you, with some of the greatest fighters. What I want to do with Carl Bobo Olson, I want to tell you who he fought and break down some of the fighters' careers that he fought, just to give you a perspective of how good of a fighter Carl Bobo Olson really was. Now, he defeated fighters such as Joey Maxim. Joey Maxim was a light heavyweight champion who Archie Moore would defeat in 1952 and claim championship for 10 years. He was also a man who defeated Ray Robinson. In Yankee Stadium, 1952, Ray Robinson was moving up for middleweight, and he was to challenge Joey Maxim for his light heavyweight championship belt. And that's how Carl Bobo Olson would eventually face Randy Turpin in an elimination title for that belt. But Carl Bobo Olson would also be in the ring with fighters such as Ralph Tiger Jones. He was from Yonkers, New York. Very tough and rugged fighter. He would defeat Ralph Tiger Jones. Walter Carrier, defeat him. But he had problems with Sugar Ray Robinson. He lost to him all 4 times. Robinson had a fighting career record of 174 wins, 109 knockouts, 19 losses, 1 by knockout. And he had 6 draws. Now, the thing with Ray Robinson was in a ring with Carl Bobo Olson, Carmen Basilio twice, Kid Gavilan twice, Sammy Engot 3 times, Marty Servo 3 times, Fritzy Zivic twice, Jake LaMotta 6 times, Henry Armstrong once, Gene Fulmer 3 times, Eugene Hairston, Joey Maxim, Joey Gianda, was in there with Joey Giardello and Paul Pender. Fought Paul Pender twice. Paul Pender was from Boston. Terry Downs, Izzy Genazzo, Wilfie Greaves, Ralph Dupas, Steve Belois, Young Gene Buffalo, Ozzie Harris, they called him the Bulldog, Tommy Bell. You name it, Ray Robinson was in the ring with that fighter. And a majority of the fighters that I just mentioned to you were all world champions. But Olson was also in the ring with the old mongoose, Archie Moore. Moore was in the ring with Charlie Burley and Ezzy Charles and Rocky Marciano, Muhammad Ali, Yvonne Durrell, Jack Chase 5 times, Aaron Little Tiger Wade, Alabama Kid, fought him twice. Curtis the Hatchman Shepard, Oakland Billy Smith. Oakland Billy Smith was the California light heavyweight champion. He was in there with Harold Johnson 5 times, Leonard Marrow, and Charlie Doc Williams, Jimmy Bivens, Eddie Booker, you name it. And the Archie Moore was in the ring with him. Olsen was also in the ring with Don Fulmer. Don Fulmer had a fighting career record of 79 fights, 54 wins. He had 14 knockouts, 20 losses, and he was stopped twice with 5 draws. Now, he was the younger brother of Gene Fulmer. And Don Fulmer would also be in the ring with Billy Douglas. Billy Douglas was the father of James Buster Douglas. Douglas had defeated Mike Tyson. 1990. February 10th. Biggest upset in boxing history, outside of Jimmy Braddock and Max Baer. Fulmer would also be in the ring with Joe Hopkins and Nino Benvenuti. World-class fighters. Benvenuti was a middleweight champion. Carl Bobo Olsen would also be in the ring with Kid Gavilan. Now, Kid Gavilan would be the first title defense for Carl Bobo Olsen after he would defeat Randy Turpin in 1953. Gavilan was also a welterweight champion. He had total bouts of 143 fights, 108 wins, 28 knockouts, 30 losses, 5 draws. And he was 5 foot 10 inches and had a 71-inch reach. He was in the ring with Ralph Tiger Jones twice, Del Flanagan and Bobby Dykes, Eduardo Lassie, one of the hardest hitters in the 1950s. Hector Contents and Johnny Bratton, Ernie Durando and Carmen Basilio, Norman Hayes. Kid Gavilan was in there with Ray Robinson twice. He was one of the greatest Cuban fighters in boxing history. Was also in the ring with Norman Hayes. He had a fighting career record of 43 total bouts, 25 wins, 17 losses, 8 KOs. And he was in the ring with Earth Panther, Carl Bobo Olsen twice, Jake LaMotta twice, Ernie Durando, Robert Villamain, and Chester Slider. Also was in the ring with Milo Savage. 105 fights, 49 wins, 24 knockouts, 46 losses. And he was stopped 3 times. But the experience that Milo Savage would have is what counts in this equation. Was also in the ring with Rory Calhoun. Very hard puncher he was. 2-fisted fighter. Had a total bout career of 62. 45 wins, 21 knockouts, 15 losses, and he was stopped 5 times. He had 2 draws. He stood 5 foot 9 inches. He was from White Plains, New York. He was in there with Jimmy Ellis. Jimmy Ellis would hold the WBA heavyweight championship belt. Rory Calhoun was in a ring with Bobo Olsen and Florentino Fernandez. Spiderweb and Henry Hank, Joey Giamba and Dick Tiger. He was in there with Dick Tiger twice. Spiderweb. Was also in a ring with Bobby Boyd and Randy Sandy, Yama Bahama and Rocky Castellani. Gene Anderson, Gene Armstrong. Was also in a ring with Davey Sands. Fought him twice, lost to him twice. Sands had a total bout career of 100 fights. 87 wins, 52 knockouts, 10 losses, and he was stopped twice. He had 1 draw. I got news for you about Davey Sands, one of the greatest fighters in boxing history, from Australia. And everyone wanted to see him fight Ray Robinson. Fight never came off. And they were about to sign that contract. Ray Robinson lost in 52 to Joey Maxim. Davey Sands had moved up to the light heavyweight division. They were going to meet in the middle. But unfortunate truck accident overturned. And Davey Sands would be killed. Davey Sands was one of 5 brothers. And he was a middleweight. Might have been a welterweight as well as a light heavyweight champion for Australia. And he could fight. He was in the ring with Dick Turpin, Randy Turpin's brother. Robert Villamain, who was the middleweight champion of Pennsylvania. Carl Bobo Olsen twice and Billy Myers. Young Jack Johnson and George Cook. Carl Bobo Olson was some fighter. Very underrated. As I stated to you, he was in the ring with some of the best fighters of his day. And when we talk about great fighters, we have to mention Carl Bobo Olson. This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Salute to my subscribers. Salute to Carl Bobo Olson. Very good fighter. And he was a middleweight champion of the world.